Hey, good evening. We'll call the Hawarden, Iowa City Council to order on Wednesday, October the 28th already, 2020 at 5:31 p.m. All present are staff and council members and some guests. So a reminder to guests, if you wish to give feedback to the council and myself and staff, your opportunity for that will be open business from the community. Agenda item number 1C. We will limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're talking about if a number of you are there, if you're talking about the same item, we'd please hold it to 5 minutes for the whole item. So, first standard agenda item for the council is approval of the October 14th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes.
So moved.
There's been a motion by John. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jen. No questions or clarifications, so all in favor of the October 14th, 2000 City Council meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. That passes 5-0. Next is approval of claims for payment. I haven't started with Rob lately, so I'll ask for questions from Rob.
No questions.
Okay. Jen?
No questions.
John, any questions?
None, thank you.
Okay. Travis?
None, thank you.
Tim?
No. So
Okay.
moved.
There's been a motion by Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jen. All in favor then of the approval of the October 28th claims for payment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you again. That passes 5-0. Next is open business from the community. Anyone wish to address the council? Okay. Move on to the mayor's report. Short mayor's report tonight. I received from the second graders community problem sharing with the mayor comments, and always interesting to see their perspective of the city. I'm just going to read a few of them. I think the biggest problem in my community is people not watching for pets and people. So that's a good reminder for all of us adults that get the opportunity to drive to do that. And I think this problem could be solved. People watch where they are going. That makes sense from all perspectives. Swayze said that people are knocking down trash cans at the city park. And how we can solve this problem, you could call them to stop it. That makes sense too. So some of these had their phone numbers on the bottom, so I took the opportunity last Sunday to call a few of them and thank them and find out their concerns. And that's always a pleasurable part of being mayor. And thanks for the parents that helped to get their phone numbers down there. And you know, one of the calls, the parents were helping the second grader talk, and that was great. So we had some good conversations. I'll get myself off of the second grade level, and we'll move to staff reports. We'll start with Mike, please.
The only thing I have is John Out submitted a letter letting us know that he'll no longer be able to offer his service to the city. He was cleaning our community center after events and redoing our floors. So due to health reasons, he is having to disband his service. So we do thank him for his many years of service since we were in this building and wish him well.
Okay, likewise, Sean's been a valued asset to keeping this facility very clean and had to work a lot of late nights to get things ready for things that might have taken place the next day. So our thanks to John as a community, and as you pointed out, we wish him well with health. Jacob, anything financially?
Next meeting, I'll have the annual financial report to bring to you guys for approval, and then we'll get that submitted, and that is all I've got for this one.
Well, it's nice to get those things submitted. Thank you very much. Larry, we'll go next to you over there.
Nothing this week.
Larry, whoa, all right. You took Jim's words right out of his mouth. Jim, anything you want to say?
No, Larry covered it all. When you see Travis's list, you'll know why the three of us yield our time.
How about you, Corey? Anything?
Nothing to report. Wait for the
Travis, bring it on. Thanks.
I've got a project update, and if you look at the list, you'd think it was spring and we were starting a whole bunch of new projects, but we're really trying to wind down the season and get everything accomplished before the weather sets in. This week really kind of put the brakes on, and so we're going to power on next week. The south feeder, that's moving along really well. Many of the lines have been energized, and the guys are starting to switch over customers from the overhead to the new underground system. Another project that really kind of kicked off last week is we're going to do new decorative lighting from 10th Street to 12th Street on Central. If you've noticed, there's 3 different types of poles and lights in there. Some have been hit in the past, and we've replaced with what we had, not what's there. So we're going to work on that. And the reason we started this in the fall was we had the south feeder contractor here in town already, so he bored in some conduit for the 2 lighting circuits. And then in the spring, we'll add the lights. So Rehab Systems, they do our yearly sewer cleaning. They were in town last week to get started, and this weather, with the cold weather, they took this week off, and they'll be back next Monday to finish up. ACO, they're working on our pool filter. That's set in place, and some of the piping is done. They also took a week off. They'll be back next week to finish up. We have begun work on our levee, and we talked a little bit about this last week. We have to raise the levee in 3 spots up to a foot. And the reason for this is we're trying to certify the levee through the Corps and FEMA to get it certified that it will protect the downtown and about 80 homes that are in that floodplain. And the reason that we have to raise it has to do with that train bridge that's there. It constricts the water flow, which we have to have 4 foot of freeboard instead of the 3 that we already have. We kind of went back and forth on that, but FEMA says you need to do these to these standards, and that's what we have to do. Work on 7th Street on Avenue D. We've put new storm drain intakes there, and we're redoing the piping out to the south. This will allow us to build that berm along the south side of 7th Street to kind of help with that flooding in Frog Pond. Our street sweeper just finally got fixed. That was been out of commission for about 45 days. I don't know if you've noticed all the leaves and the dirty streets, but when the weather warms up, maybe later this week or for sure next week, we'll get that out and get going on the streets. Last but not least, the wastewater project is very close to being completed. They're doing some final grading and a few minor items. Grass seeding, it's going to be waiting until spring on that, but we just kind of ran out of time for that. So it's a lot to
Question in
digest.
the levee as we put all this dirt back on and those types of things. I know quite a number of people appreciate being able to walk on that. We can't drive on that, obviously, but
Right.
we can walk on that.
When
Legally?
everything's all done, yes, there'll be a walking trail back on top.
Okay. Is there an estimated time when people can, excuse me, start to do that again?
They should be done with the dirt work in another, week and a half, 2 weeks. It might be spring though before the rock and everything's back up on top. So just depending on the weather. If we can get that placed this fall yet, we will right away.
I have a question.
Yes.
If by getting this levee certified, does that mean that those homes are going to be taken out of the flood zone, or
Yep,
they will be?
They will still be considered in a flood zone, but they're protected.
Okay,
And without this certification, then they're in a flood zone and they have to have flood insurance.
okay,
And that really affects a lot of businesses downtown as well.
okay,
So,
okay. I just want to make sure that that's fine.
yep.
Citywide cleanup went well?
Yes, yeah, it went really well. There was less stuff, but it seems like fall is usually a little smaller than the springtime. But yeah, it went well. Thanks.
Thank you.
And, pardon me, just a reminder about parking on the streets when it snows. We're starting, well, obviously it's snowing earlier, but that comes into position pretty quick, obviously. So,
Yes, make plans now for finding a place for them to park. Obviously, this time around, they did not write any snow tickets. our, plows really couldn't get out and do the sides anyway, but for the future, yes.
Any other thoughts or comments from council before we move on? Okay, move on to agenda item number 3. This is the third reading ordinance 727, ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, amending provisions pertaining to non-public well or water supply system. An overview for that again, Mike?
Going through our source water protection plan, one of the most glaring things was sand points and private wells are a major spot for contamination into the aquifer. Through that, it was recommended we have an ordinance that prohibited those from city limits. We know that there's probably a couple out there, but this would prohibit any new ones from coming in.
Okay, so this would be the third and final reading of ordinance 727. Is there a motion for this third reading?
So moved.
Moved by Rob. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jan. Roll call vote, please, for the third reading of ordinance 727.
Feldhacker,
Aye.
Bergsma,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bucky,
Aye.
Kurth.
Aye.
5-0 roll call vote. Third reading of ordinance 727 passes. Agenda item number 4. This is the first reading of ordinance 728. This is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 113, Section 113.04, water rates. And an overview for that, please.
Yes. When earlier this spring, we had Missouri River Energy do a water rate study for us. We were typically on the low end of our water rates. Going historically back, we have, back in 2008, we had a $800,000 surplus in our water plant fund. As of last year, we were in the whole 260,000 roughly. So we were going to start the new water rate change in June, but we didn't want to do it when people were watering and stuff like that, when our heaviest usage was. So we were going to wait and start it the 1st of January. They're recommending a 15% increase for each year for the next 3 years, which equates to a typical home of about $5 a month. And granted, you keep adding $5 onto things, it does get expensive, but we also have to have things that we got to prepare for in the future and need to build those funds back up so we're able to do improvements to the system as well as maintain.
So kind of obvious we haven't kept up with.
That $5, that's over the 3-year period, or is that $5?
$5 per month each year.
Each year.
So at the end of 3 years, it'll be about a $15 a month. There are opportunities for water conservation in there, and obviously this year, I know I put a lot of water on my yard, so some of those things may have to change for me personally. I was looking for it online here, but in the packet there's some graphs that show where we are now and then where we would be with the two proposed compared to other communities. And we're still going to be towards the low end on our water rates, but unfortunately we do take a look at raising them up.
And like you promoted this year, those folks that wish to water have an opportunity to put in a separate meter specific for the lawn watering.
Correct, and that one would not be assessed sewer against those that are watering the school in the yard. We did have a lot of people take advantage of that, and I think it worked out well. We had a few people who initially didn't feel it was worth it, and they got their first water bill and thought that it would be a good idea.
Sure.
So, we promote people saving money where they can, where we can, but unfortunately the rates are what they are.
Thoughts or comments from council in regards to the first reading of ordinance 728? Is there a motion for that ordinance? Moved by Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jen. Roll call vote, please, for first reading of ordinance 728.
Bergsma,
Aye.
Kurth. Feldhacker,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bucky.
Aye.
On a 5-0 roll call vote, the first reading of ordinance 728 passes. As with any ordinance, there'll be 3 readings, so they can be public comment at the next meeting, or if it gets to the 3rd meeting, the meeting after that. And as Mike said, trying to get everything self-sufficient in all the different areas of the city. So, move on to agenda item number 5, first draw request number 1 for the Cdbg Housing Rehab Grant.
Back about a year and a half ago, we were awarded a Cdbg Housing Rehab Grant in the amount of roughly $200,000. And due to the pandemic and the health things, this was really held up. They're to the point now where they got the first 3 houses selected, and they'll start, hopefully, the rehab on those probably will be spring now. But through the administrative costs, they did the lead-based studies and things like that. So this is the first bill for that. What we do is we pay it, it gets submitted to the state, and then they draw on that funds and reimburse us.
That amount is $8,400.
$8,400.
Okay. Is there a motion for the first draw request from the Cdbg Housing Rehab Grant?
So moved.
Moved by John. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Thank you. All in favor of the first request, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes 5-0. Mike, you mentioned today you had someone that's a part of that, very thankful for got a new roof and new windows. And
Roof windows and sidings, that she was very appreciative of the city looking forward and applying for those grants, and she was really happy that she was one of those chosen in the first round. Altogether, they're looking at doing 6, possibly more. It depends on the amount of work each house needs. They allow them so much money. If it's under that, that can go towards an additional home.
great, we've had good success with that and getting people's houses up to date. Okay. Next, we'll move on to further discussion, local option sales tax. At our last meeting, we sent a proposal from our board to the hospital board, and they have sent back their offer. And I don't know if Matt or Stan want to just give us an overview of your thought process with that, if you would, please.
Right here?
Yes, yes, please.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys letting us come in and present this. I want everybody to know, I know there's some question about our budget. We do budget annually, and that's a pretty rigorous process, I think, with the administrator and finance committee. So all the lost money that we get does go directly to our bottom line. So it's not a revenue thing that generates on the bottom line. That goes directly to the bottom line. So to pull away from this so quickly, in our opinion, could make it difficult for us to continue to expand and therefore slowing down the positive economic impact that the hospital has on the community. So I think maybe you guys got, Mike, did they get this? Okay, so I think you got a proposal that we sent back yesterday. And I think there was some explanation. Hopefully we can come to an agreement of some sort sometime. But with this, of all the local option sales tax money, we would like to keep $300,000 to start. Going forward, well, and with us keeping that, let's see, the city of Hawarden receiving monies that would exceed that, and us keeping the $300,000 unless we would incur a negative bottom line. At that point, the hospital would receive all the lost proceeds. I don't foresee that. We obviously don't know that, but So we would get the first 300, you would get everything on top of that. In the event that the amount of money from the local option sales tax would exceed $600,000, we would split it 50-50 going forward. And in talking to Mike, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but in looking at the projections, where we were 2016, 17, where we were this last year or currently, the actual last year was $406,000. So what that would mean is $300,000 for the hospital, $106,000 for the city. There are projections out there, apparently, and to project conservatively, they're talking about potentially a 20% increase. And since we wouldn't be starting this until July of 21, there's potential with a 20% increase, we would go up to $487,000. And I didn't extrapolate out, but roughly that would be 2021 would be 487. Going forward, 2022 or 21-22 would be 500 and some, and close to 600, and then 22-23 would be over 600 if it continued to grow at a 20% rate. And we proposed this to honor the vote from 1995. Granted, things have changed, but being in a pandemic, it makes it tough for us to really know where we're at. We're trying to protect the hospital. You guys are trying to move the city forward. We appreciate that. But there are some things we can't predict, which is why we want to go at a little slower rate, or at least at this rate, to maybe protect us a little bit. There's programs out there that we can't predict how they're going to be affected in the future. One particular program is called the 340B program, which is a drug program, which generates revenues for the hospital of several $100,000. Now, as most of you know, I do have a little insight about what goes on with drugs and the government. I have seen current legislation that's starting to pull back on that program, which concerns us because if we would lose that revenue and all the local option sales tax, or a big chunk of it, that could really affect our bottom line negatively. And we realize that, yes, we did receive millions of dollars. I don't know, 10 million, Jason? 8 million? $8 million from the federal government. It's like pennies from heaven, so to speak. However, that's not money that just goes into our general budget. That money has to be used and spent for appropriate, or we'll call them COVID appropriate items, and they have to be used relative to projects or things that can be used to treat COVID. If we don't spend it, we lose it. It's not just money that we can throw to the bottom line. So the bottom line for us is that we do want to work with the city and benefit both parties. We simply don't want to do it in a manner that's too fast and will compromise our ability to grow and expand our services. So to make that clear again with our proposal, whatever the dollar amount is, we would take the first 300, you get everything after that, up to 600,000, and after that we would split 50-50. So that's basically where we're at. So thank you.
if there isn't going to be any discussion of it right now, I just wanted to clarify one thing, Matt. When I heard you say something about if you guys went negative, that then you wouldn't split it. Do you mean if you went negative, you would get back enough to break even, or do you mean nothing?
That's certainly open to discussion.
I just wanted to know what.
No, that's a great question. I mean, I think we set it in there, we would like to then at least pull it all back, but obviously we don't, if we're a negative $10, we don't need $600,000.
I just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's a great question, but I think that's certainly part of, that can be part of the discussion, or compromise, or whatever. Good question.
Your financial year runs the same as the cities as far as, yep.
July.
So like, we weren't planning on starting this until 2021 anyway.
Next
So
July.
your financials for this COVID will pretty much should be in by next July. So, well, I don't know. Who knows? So,
I guess I,
And then just to clarify, one thing I did say, with that projection, if that projection is true and comes to fruition, we're going to be there in 3 years anyway. Which is what you guys wanted. We would like to hold off. We would really like to hold it off 5 years. But with this, if it comes to fruition, we're going to be there quicker than 5 years, and which is a number we can live with.
I think I would still like to see maybe more of a concrete number, or just maybe a certain percentage, but definitely willing, I think, let's spread it, to go out a little bit longer and to take more time to get there, and that way then the hospital knows, I mean, we know exactly what numbers we're working with, but then they also get to adjust to that and see if that's working. And we can still keep this an open conversation as it goes on, and how things are going with it. But I think what we want to use it for are payments, and we probably would create debt, and we would need to have more of a concrete number for payments to be able to know each year that what we're going to get.
The lost sales tax is really the only concrete number that we get. Everything else depends on how well we do. Make up $200,000, we got to probably do $1 million. Bring it to our bottom. So concrete numbers are great. They don't look very good for us.
So Jen, you're thinking of a at least number that we would get?
Right. But maybe over a longer period of time. Not in 3 years. Go out, maybe do the same 25% for 2 years, or, just, I don't know, just to stretch it out a little bit to allow for those budgets to adjust to it.
But you were still thinking of like a minimum payment to the city, assuming we had taken on debt with the assumption of
Yeah.
getting those funds in, that we would
Yeah.
have something. Yeah, if Matt's projections are correct, that's right around 38%. What I'm looking at, so.
I can ask, what is the big jump in lost sales tax as far as?
Yeah, but that was only a 1-year jump. What Matt's talking about is if we have 20% over multiple years. They did predict that the lost money would increase 24%, but that was pre-COVID. When the new projections came out, it was about 30,000 actually that they predicted, which surprised a lot of cities. Because at first they were saying it was going to go negative, but it hasn't done that. The projection was 389 for fiscal year 21. 24% they talked about was pre-COVID, and it was just a one-year jump because of internet sales.
Those are not, so to clarify, Mike, is then I misunderstood what you said. In our discussion yesterday, I was under the impression it was going to be,
I don't think you're gonna see that kind of increase each
It was
year.
supposed to be a 1 year. It was all pre-COVID. And the projection came out that we gave to the hospital board. They expressed the FY 21 number at 389 and change. So, and I believe the year before was 354. It was about 30,000, and it wasn't near the 24% that they were talking about.
so, and then Rob, when we had a discussion this spring, we talked about and I don't remember the numbers, I'm trying to talk to Mike too, but we talked about projections going up fairly rapidly, did we not? Or was that still just a one-year thing?
I think that was just a one-year deal. They've went up quite a bit, but I think you'll see a gradual increase, but you're not gonna see that kind of jump every year. So you might see 4 or 5%, so.
Which then changes the game.
Oh, yeah, that's why when I seen the number you guys gave us, I'm like, wow, that's quite a bit, and, but, we're looking at this started, 25 years ago, and a lot of communities use this money for improvements in their communities and different things that goes on, and we definitely need that here in Hawarden too. I think the bottom line is we want to see you guys successful, we want to be successful, and we just got to get to that point, I don't know when people voted 25 years ago, they thought, well, this is going to be forever going to the hospital either. When they voted on it, maybe they did, but I don't know if we've got the same group of people in town now that was here 25 years ago. So, but I think as a group, we can talk about it, come up with something. I know where you guys are at, and you guys don't want to go behind, and we don't want to see you go behind either. So that's just me talking, so.
From our perspective, this is not going to, I can speak, I think, on behalf of the hospital board, this is not going to be a fair representation.
No.
There's no way.
No.
So, this, we're going to have to rethink this.
Yeah.
Just not, my understanding was from our meeting and, this was going to be going forward. That's honestly, that was last spring. Remember we met this quarter,
We talked at Booth this last spring about the increase this year, but that's all I recollect. I don't remember anything as far as,
Yeah, we met in the back room, talked about some projections,
but
so.
I don't know if those projections are going to carry each year at a 20, not at that rate, so. So that wishful thinking on that part, but.
So maybe we can get some more solid projections for everybody to work with.
But that's the only projection that we get is from the state.
Okay.
And projected for 21 is 386, 256. Projected for 1920 was 358, 256. It turned out to be 406, but as I've learned, there was a $40,000 back payment in that as well.
Okay.
So if you back that off, it would have been about 366. So.
Jacob, you could probably go back and take those numbers and just kind of figure the average projection.
We actually have them all.
We have everything that
So-
started.
So then you probably want to go more off that, so.
So hospital board maybe want to relook at what their thoughts were, knowing the projections and Okay. Anything else from council? Okay. Thank you for your time. We appreciate that very much. Thank you for conversation. We'll move on then to agenda item number 7. As usual, at the end of the year, we have holidays that throw out city council meetings. So.
We usually have a council meeting on the first scheduled, or it'd be the second Wednesday of the month, so that falls on Veterans Day, which is actually a holiday. We can meet that day if council wants to leave it, or if we want to move it to maybe the 18th. We usually always cancel the second meeting in November because it's the day before Thanksgiving.
Wouldn't the 18th help staff as far as financials and everything else instead of a Tuesday or a Thursday? Then it'd be kind of right, and instead of the 10th or the 12th, have it the 18th and just have one?
Yeah, I think that would help us with our incoming bills and approval as well. And I know we hate to get out of sequence of the second and fourth, but this is more unusual because it is.
Because of the Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the second one, and if we're going to move it, I guess my recommendation would be the 18th.
Okay. Then December would be the 9th and the 23rd.
Correct, and we usually cancel the one before Christmas there. And so the 9th, there's no holiday on, we can certainly still have it that day. There would be nothing precluding us from having it. Or if we wanted to move it to the next week to help with the claims and everything, we could do that as well. We'll kind of put it more in the middle before we start the January meeting.
If there's no confliction, well, obviously there may be conflictions, there always may be, but if that'd be a benefit to the staff.
Yeah.
So November 18th
November 18th,
and December 16th.
December 16th. And we'll make sure those get put on Facebook, the website, channel 10, and things like that. So we'll have. I'm sure Eric will put it in the paper as well.
Eric will call you on the, don't show up the 11th, all right? Anything else about those meeting dates? Hopefully there won't be any snow on the ground yet on any of those, just saying. Agenda item number 8, this is a closed session pursuant to Iowa Code Section 388-9 to discuss marketing and pricing strategies and proprietary information where the competitive position would be harmed by public disclosures not required of competitors and no public purpose is served by disclosure. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Moved by Travis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jen. Roll call, please, to go into closed session under Iowa Code 388-9.
Buggy,
Aye.
Kurth,
Aye.
Olson, Feldhacker,
Aye.
Bursma.
Aye.
On a 5-0, Hawarden City Council will go on closed session. That will be taped separately, and we're going to break for a few minutes while we get things set up. Hawarden City Council is now going to closed session.